They don't want what we know out there.
How a person can go from really almost nothing to becoming a millionaire by owning rental properties.
He would always buy these flip houses, and I just remember thinking, this guy is crazy. Why would he buy that house?
In the past decade, there's been a huge surge in the peer-to-peer short-term rental market.
Become an insider. So you have to know the rules before you get the game.
Every second counts. So make every second count.
Welcome to the Real Estate Jam. Whether you're just beginning or the best of the best, we're glad you're here. We will share successes, failures, and strategies for the action-taking real estate investor. And now to your hosts, JD and Melissa.
Hey guys, welcome to the Real Estate Jam podcast. I'm JD with my wonderful co-host.
Hello, JD.
Melissa, how are you today?
Great, thank you.
Good.
You?
I'm pretty excited. The week's been going pretty decent so far, and I'm actually super excited to have this conversation today. Today we got a Galen Hair, owner of Insurance Claim HQ. It's a property. He is a property insurance attorney. His firm operates in more than 7 states, including Alabama, Louisiana, Texas, and Georgia, among others. Galen and his team have helped over 1,000 families rebuild their homes and businesses. He has been rated a Super Lawyers Rising star and voted one of the National Trial Lawyers Top 100. Galen, thank you so much for coming on our show today. We're really excited. I think you're going to be able to bring a lot of value to our listeners.
No, thanks so much for having me, JD and Melissa. I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. Well, why don't we start with you kind of introducing yourself to our audience and let them know maybe why they should pay attention to you, and then we'll go into exactly what kind of stuff you can help them with.
Yeah, sure thing. So I am what we call a policyholder attorney. So I exclusively focus my practice on representing people that hold insurance policies, have had some kind of damage or need to enforce that policy in some way. And usually by the time they call me, they're having some trouble with their insurance company, albeit not always, right? And what we've done is kind of built that practice over the years. For instance, in Florida, it's always been a big practice for decades, but it has not been that in other areas of the country. In fact, policyholders typically have found a hard time getting help. So what we've done is kind of systemize that. We've created a very large firm with a ton of people that's their passion, and we focus on just getting insurance companies to do the right thing.
Okay. Well, that leads me open to a whole bunch of questions. So I'll try to drive it into the thing that I think is going to help our audience the best. And I think that really comes down to when you are going to buy an off-market distressed property from an owner personally, not through a real estate agent. A lot of times in our market, especially after Hurricane Michael in 2018, there's a bunch of houses that either have outstanding insurance claims that have never been filed, and that kind of stuff. And one of the things that we run into is somebody who has a claim that's outstanding, but they still want to sell our house. Can we talk about that kind of thing? Or maybe like the transfer of or assignment of benefits and how that would work, and kind of some of that stuff.
Yeah. So I can confidently say that if you are purchasing and investing in real estate and you are not looking at storm distressed or other disaster distressed properties with open insurance claims or the potential for open claims, you are leaving a ton of money on the table. We all know how crazy the real estate market is right now. It's hard to find a good deal. And of course, this business works, the better the deal you get, right? So this is where the best deals are. The best deals are people that are looking to get out of this property. It's not comfortable for them. They don't love it anymore because it's damaged and their carrier's not doing the right thing, or they're no longer financially secure because they keep paying this mortgage and insurance every month. And they kind of feel like, why? I can't get things fixed, right? You want to be sensitive when you're doing that and when you're having those discussions. But ultimately, right, we all know the best seller is a seller that needs to sell. It's not a seller that is curious how much they can get. Those are the worst sellers, right? So if you can accept that as true, then like you're sitting there thinking, oh man, I really need to identify those. And by the way, you don't have to go to a major disaster stricken area to find those opportunities. You can find those in neighborhoods where there's been a hail claim in the last few months, right? They may not be they might not be out of love with their house per se, but they might know the roof is messed up and they need a new roof, especially if it's an expensive roof, right? I have a client who is purchasing a mid-level high-rise, a mid-rise, I guess they call it, in a major downtown area, and it is basically going to be free by the time the insurance claim pays out.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that distressed a building, right? And you can't just go purchase mid-rises in downtown metropolitan areas. That doesn't happen every day if you don't come from that kind of money. So like starting there, if you accept that as true, that's where you need to be looking, right? And then the step becomes, how do you identify those properties? And then how do you manage those claims, right?
Sure. So, okay. I guess my question is, once a person has filed their claim, one, they have a duty to mitigate to some extent, right? But now they've decided that they want to sell the property, and that claim hasn't been paid out. Is there a way to allow me to purchase the house, but they still maintain the insurance settlement, even though I own the house and I'm going on to fix it and do my own thing? Or is there a way for me to take over their insurance claim as part of the purchase of the property?
Yeah, so you'll see all those permutations. I saw one property sell, and it was actually a condition that the seller could keep the claim. But if you're buying, you don't want them to keep the claim. You want the claim.
Right.
So every state's a little bit different, but generally speaking, there are multiple ways to skin a cat, and there's a way for you to prosecute and or benefit from that claim if you have purchased the property. Now, in most states, it's not going to happen automatically. You have to do things, right? You either have to take an assignment of claim or an assignment of benefit, or as a stipulation to the purchase agreement, a power of attorney that allows you to prosecute the claim for the seller and requires the seller to cooperate. Right. So depending on the state you're in, you have to do it slightly differently, which is why you have to bring someone like me in when you're kind of structuring that and figuring out what that looks like. And then you have to stay up on it, right? Because the rules are changing. Like in Florida, the rules literally are changing right now. Yeah. Like as we speak, the rules are changing, and they're trying to get rid of assignments of benefit because they think when contractors take them, they do all these bad, terrible things. Well, sellers aren't really doing that. Not to mention most contractors aren't doing that, but sellers aren't really doing that, but you need to stay up on those rules. But it's going to be one of those three. You're either going to have a document called an assignment of claim, you're going to have a document called an assignment of benefit, or, and it's a little more complicated, but very feasible, you're going to have the right to step into the seller's shoes through a series of purchase agreements and powers of attorney that require that seller to work with you on that claim as you progress.
Okay. And I guess my next question is, we need somebody just like you, but I haven't had to have to use an attorney for this purpose before. So how do I know which kind of attorney to get, and how do I vet that person to make sure that they're going to understand what it is that I'm doing and how we do it?
Yeah, so look for someone that does this work regularly. Do not look for someone that after a hurricane or a major disaster says they do this work. Look for someone with a history of doing it prior to a big disaster. Like, I kind of laugh. So I live in New Orleans, and we just had Hurricane Ida. I mean, I don't care. At the end of the day, we have a lot of work and we do a lot of work. So I really couldn't care less about competition. It's not something that keeps me up at night. But I did kind of chuckle because the month after Hurricane Ida, I saw this phrase storm lawyer. I'd never even seen the phrase. I don't know what a storm lawyer is. It sounds like an X-Men, right? But all these lawyers suddenly said they were storm lawyers. And I looked it up, and like a month before that, they were doing divorces or traffic tickets or personal injury cases, right? So you do want someone, and in every state just about, there is someone that is kind of the go-to lawyer or firm. You know, we're lucky because we're kind of that go-to lawyer in a number of states, but in almost every state, there is one or multiple firms that are known as like the people. And if I'm not in your state and you want to contact me, I'll tell you who to go to because I know them all. Sure. Right. That's the other thing. We all know each other. Right. So if you're talking to someone that does this work, but they're busy or whatever, and they can't make you a real referral, that's a big, big concern. Yeah, right. Because we go to the same conferences, we talk to the same people, we have dinner at the same places. Like, you know, we meet multiple times a year. And if they're not in that world, it means they probably don't have a bunch of experience there.
Sure. So when it comes to compensation for that type of person, are you guys paid as a percentage of the insurance claim? Are you paid just here $5,000 retainer and you're going to work for $750 an hour until my money runs out? What does that look like?
Yeah, most of us work as a percentage of the insurance claim. Sometimes it sounds nice to get paid hourly, but I find that lawyers work harder when they share in the success and they eat the failure, right? It's not, and we kind of do the transactional side of it as a loss leader, really, like meaning we don't really charge for it because we want the claim. So if you're bringing us the claim, we're going to kind of help you with the documents. There may be some transactional costs, right? If you're in one of those states where something actually has to be filed in the mortgage records to affect this, you got to go pay for that. And I'm gonna have to bring in a title lawyer to do the filing at the end, but that's like a couple $100. Right. But most of us work on percentage, and the percentages are not as high as you would think. The average lawyer that is truly ingrained in this area, now it does vary from state to state. So let me say that so I don't get hate mail from lawyers in certain states. It's going to be between 10 and 15% if we don't file suit. It's going to be 15% in some of the harder states and 10% in some of the easier states. It could go up. There are some states that are just really, really hard where you can't be profitable at 15%, but most of us can actually make a little bit of profit and let you walk with 90% of your claim proceeds.
Right. And now, would you say that once you bring in the big guns and you have somebody fighting for you, that most of that will settle prior to going to court or before having to have some sort of trial for it? Or do the insurance company, because what we hear all the time is that the insurance companies have these teams of lawyers that are just there and they'll drag it out forever so that you can't afford to pay your lawyer, and they'll walk away without ever having to make good on the claim that they legally should be paying on.
So they do have teams of lawyers and they do drag it out forever because they want to make it harder for you, right? But look, I'll tell you, our firm and many of my colleagues, we have a very, very high success rate at getting significant funds paid without filing suit. Now, we file suit in the majority of our cases because we pick states where we really like the bad faith statutes. So the other thing we can do for you is once we've gotten you paid pretty much where you want to be, if the carrier didn't treat you fairly or didn't treat the seller fairly, we can actually go back and file a bad faith claim and recover additional funds for you, which offsets our fee and does all these other things, right? So we file the majority of our claims, but that's because we're aggressive and we believe in getting our clients every single penny that they might be entitled to. But it is possible without filing suit to reach reasonable numbers on the vast majority of claims.
Sure. And then I guess in Florida, it's really popular to get a public adjuster. Do you have experience working with them, and what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so same thing. So we all know each other, right? I can tell who's good and who's bad. In Florida, it's really hard because there's a lot of public adjusters, right? And some of them are really good and some of them are really bad. And they're all over in Louisiana right now hanging out because there hadn't been a good storm in Florida for a while. But
yeah, that's right. Travel back and forth to
they do.
States.
Look, public adjusters are what I call lawyer lights, right? They can't file suit. They can maybe make some threats depending on the state they're in. They're going to help you with the valuation. We're likely going to get someone that is public adjuster-esque involved. We're either going to get a public adjuster or an estimator, because we're lawyers. We don't know how much you're owed.
Sure.
So we're going to get someone like that involved. So we typically work as a team.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense to me. At what point, if I have this distressed property, I know that there's an insurance claim that's either been or partial payments. Do you guys deal with that too? Like where there's a partial payment that comes in, but it's not the full amount or not enough to cover the damage. And then I guess the question there is, at what point should I, as an investor, contact you guys to look at this? Is it after I got the property under contract and I'm looking at purchasing it, after the property's closed and is in my name now, or somewhere in between that process?
Yeah. So a few things. So first of all, I would say less than 10% of our claims are outright denials. Insurance companies don't deny the majority of claims. They just don't pay them. Even a hail claim. You hear people say my hail claim was denied. It wasn't denied. If you go look at it, they wrote for like the AC fins and the soft metals and said it was below deductible. So it still wasn't denied. They just didn't pay anything.
Right.
I would say over 90% of claims are underpaid. If you're sitting there listening and you think, man, I got treated so fair on my insurance claim, there's a 90% chance you are wrong and you just don't know what you were entitled to. And great, you're their best customer because you're never going to look, right? Most claims are underpaid. So yeah, that happens. And in fact, I have a lot of clients and I love them for it. They go get that first check and then call me, right? Because I need to know how badly they're going to be underpaid. They know how to get the first check. But I will say this, where you engage us in the process depends on a couple of things. It depends on who you are in terms of what you wear, who your carrier is, and how much heavy lifting you're willing to do. So if you're a real estate investor and you already have a good set of documents that's going to make sure you get the claim, then you don't need us until after that first check comes in. If you're not, then please, I hate when I get a call being like, so I purchased a property a few weeks ago and I want to know how I can get the claim. And I'm like, now that you have no leverage with the seller whatsoever, you want me to call this person and ask them to sign a bunch of documents, which they are not going to sign, because the second they walk away, they've decided they've charged too little for their home. Right. But if you have all that locked down in advance, then you can afford to bring me in later. And then some carriers, it really makes sense to get involved early. So, and some types of damage, right? When I do hail claims on really expensive specialty roofs, like clay tile roofs and things like that, I get involved on day one because we can get a lot of those paid. When I get involved 6 months down the road, the file may be documented really well towards a denial, and it may be an uphill battle. Same thing with asbestos. Like if you have a weird material, you should probably get a professional in there early. But if it's a standard residential, see what they'll pay you and then hire a professional to help you out, help you finish the rest.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So if we're dealing specifically with a distressed property that has some sort of insurance problem, I should probably figure out from you before I go in and have the seller sign all the closing docs and get it, because we're going to need their help and we don't have any way of making them do it once everything's said and done on that end. But if we can't purchase the house until they sign these papers, there's a little bit of leverage there to help get that through. That makes sense. Okay, so then I guess the next question that I have is, at what point does it make from a monetary standpoint? At what point does it make sense for me to bring you in? If it's a busted window on the front lawn, or the leading out to the front lawn, that's probably not worth your time or my time to bring you in and do a big insurance battle. But if it is an entire roof in the back house, half of the house is flooded, that probably seems to make more sense to me. Is there a range or how can I tell when it's appropriate to bring you in and when it's not?
So that's also going to vary state by state. For instance, in a state with a really good bad faith statute, it's lower, right? And in a state with no bad faith statute, it's higher. The whole game is this, right? What is the amount of money where if you have to pay 10, 15% out of your claim, you won't feel it and it won't hurt you, right? So that's kind of the game, unfortunately, that we have to play. And you're right. Look, if it's a busted window, if it's something below deductible, there's no discussion to be had, right? If you know, but if you're looking at something like a full roof replacement or a bunch of interior damage and mold, keep in mind the value is higher than you think it is. You have access to cheap contractors because you're flipping homes and stuff like that. That is not how insurance pays out. Right now we've got COVID protocols and you need to follow OSHA guidelines and things like that. So if someone's holding the carrier accountable, something you think you can go get done really cheap and on the fly, we can actually get you money to get it done right. And, ultimately what you choose to do, that's up to you. But that, if you choose not to follow that, you'll lose some of your recoverable depreciation, but we can still get you paid to do the job right. So that's so first of all, up your numbers a little bit in your head. Right. But I would say if a real dispute is valued at like 75,000 or up, it probably makes sense to get a lawyer involved. If it's less than that, it might be more of a public adjuster, but we'll help you with that. Right. So I have clients that they kind of send us everything. We don't assist them with everything and we don't charge them for everything, but we take a look at what they send, and they also have a public adjuster they work with really closely. Mm-hmm. And, we say, and his name's Mike, and we're like, oh, send this to Mike, we'll send it over to Mike with our thoughts. Right. And we'll even type an email to the public adjuster being like, here's what we think. Let us know if we're missing anything, and we work together on everything. And that really helps too, but they do a lot of volume. So what you really want to do is come up with the relationships that make you comfortable.
Sure.
And you want to just lean in on those relationships and let those people use their expertise.
Right. So what you're saying is I don't need to make those decisions myself. If I build a good relationship, I'll send that to you guys and you'll let me know whether it's worth my time or it's not worth my time, and worth your time or not worth your time to move forward. I think that helps.
100%. Yeah. All the time. We even look at like photos and they're like, what do you think about this hail claim? And I see like perfectly circular marks that are clearly mechanical. And I'm like, I think you don't have a hail claim, right? Don't waste your time.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Okay. Melissa, do you have any?
That's super interesting. Can you tell us like the difference between like the states? Because some of our listeners are not just in Florida.
Yeah.
So that would be interesting to see the difference in those.
Yeah, there's 50 states, so there's a lot, right? But they kind of fall into 3 categories. The no bad faith, which is not a great place to be. That's like New York. Georgia's trying to stop becoming a no bad faith state, but no bad faith is not a good place to be. That's essentially where on your best day, the carrier, if you go to trial and win, the insurance company will be ordered to pay you exactly the dollar amount of your estimate, not a penny more for the trouble, right? That's not a great state to be in. Then there's states like Alabama, which is what we call like extra burdensome bad faith, where you have to show it's in Mississippi, where you have to show it's more than like a pocketbook dispute, more than just a difference in amount. But if you can show some actual bad behavior, you can recover penalties and things like that. And then there's like states like Louisiana, which is one of the best in the country. And Florida has been really good, but Florida's trying to move out of that really good status. They're trying to get worse intentionally because the governor has decided there are too many lawsuits about insurance claims in Florida. So Louisiana will be the best once Florida finishes all this legislation. And that is a state where essentially if the carrier doesn't have a good reason for not paying timely, they're going to owe penalties and attorney's fees. Yeah. And those are great states to be in, right? There's like all these charts available. Obviously I can't go through all 50 states, but they're kind of the states you would think. They're states, the really, really good states tend to be the states that are subject to a lot of disasters. Why? Because politicians have had their homes destroyed and have saw fit to get good laws in place. And then the states that really don't have a lot of stuff happen are states that don't seem to think it's too important.
Awesome. Well, so if some of our listeners think that your services might suit them or help them moving forward in either their personal life or in their investment side of the house, where can we send them to find out more about you and your company and just how you can help them either live better or have a better business?
Yeah, so website is probably the easiest, insuranceclaimhq.com. You can find all of our stuff there, but we're also on Facebook, Instagram, and we do actually respond to those messages. And you can call us anytime, 24/7, 844-CLAIM-84.
Awesome. Well, we really appreciate you coming on the show today. And I know for a fact that Melissa and I are going to be calling you because we run into this almost every week in our market. And before speaking to you, we had never talked to anybody that could help guide us in that direction. So I look forward to at least chatting it up with your office here in probably the near future.
We'll be here to help.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Galen.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for listening to the Real Estate Jam. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. For more information, check out our website, therealestatejam.com, or find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at The Real Estate Jam. If you have any questions, feel free to drop us an email at therealestatejam@gmail.com. See you next episode.